Today's the day of the Global Game Jam. We get 42 hours spanning over 3 days to make a game, and we've got a nice team of 2. For context, we're jamming at the site on our uni. Now, Dabero, who I'm teaming up with, has also made a video on the making of last words during this game jam. Dabero focuses more on the art side of things, and his videos are honestly more enjoyable, so I've got a link in the description. However, I'll look more into the process and the choices we've made to create last words. To make a game, you need an idea. To get an idea, you need to... well, there are many different ways, but we went for a word web. You place roots in the middle and thought of words relating to it, then words relating to words related to roots, and so forth. It's a quick way to get many different ideas, and it works even better in a team since you can't expand on words for others. We got Rudin, Tudin, taproots, the space-time continuum, even fractals, and I hope that you can believe that this was all within the first half hour or so. Now that we have diverged from the theme, it was time to converge again to get our idea, until we got the idea we liked best. But, well, we kind of skipped the converging as well because of this. This is where my random idea Discord server of cringy names finally comes in. More exactly, word game. It was one of those moments where I just go, this is it, and completion better than all rationale. Word game is a turn-based RPG where names are health. You can attack with words created from random letters received from your letter deck. If the letter in that word matches a letter in a name being attacked, that letter is deleted. For example, if you attacked me with ace, you delete my A and I'd be C. Once an enemy has one letter left, that letter is added to the player's letter deck and the enemy is erased. It was simple and had replayability, which is quite important in game jams since you don't tend to have time to make complex mechanics or specific levels. I thought this was a pretty neat idea, but even better was that Dabero also liked it, which, well, in my experience, the more team members you have, the easier it is to diverge, the harder it is to converge, even with just 2 people, so it saved us quite some time with the quick converge. So, I made this gameplay loop chart and we were ready to go. Now, where conceptualizations with a few team members is easier, production can be slower. Since we are just a team of 2, we are very much dependent on one another. So, it's a good idea to set your limits. What can you complete in 42 hours? Is this idea even possible with your current skills? And if not, which honestly I hope is the case, can you learn the necessary skills and complete it in a game jam spanning 42 hours? In my case, one of these new skills was reading text files for words. We needed this to generate a library of words for the enemy to attack with. I could manually add every word in the English dictionary into a list of words, but it's a game jam, so no. Luckily, a quick Google search gave me a very easy solution. Apparently, there's just a function that reads all lines of a text file and puts it into a list of words. This way, I could easily get thousands of words just by setting some file on GitHub. I then added a word checker. This just checks if whatever word is put in is also in the list of words. Now, this is surprisingly easy, and we were only 2 hours in. With that out of the way, this concept became very possible and we decided to commit to it. However, now it was going to get a lot more difficult. To finish the game, I needed to complete at least 5 things. General attributes. These are basically things applying both to the player and the enemy, like attacking and health. Player control. How do you get letters, and how do you use them? Enemy control. How does the enemy generate defenses? Randomization. How do you generate random players, decks, and enemies? This basically concerns creating uncertainties in the game to give players new challenges every play session. And finally, the gameplay loop. This concerns turn order and fighting new enemies to create an endless experience. The player and the enemy both have health and some way to attack. So, I started working on those. The health would simply be stored in a string. Now, it just needed a way to get attacked. To do this, I added a function that checks every letter of the attacking word and compares to that of the health word. If it was the health's last letter, it will also die. The word attacker checks every letter of the attack, then attacks the target with that single letter. This was done to prevent problems in the future where we'd animate attacks with single letters. The main things the player needs are a deck of letters and a way to attack. As for the deck, I created 4 lists of characters. I call them glyphs. Then, a function to pull new glyphs. It takes how many glyphs to draw, and then transfer the glyphs from the available glyph list to the active glyph list. As for the player attacking, I created glyph boxes and glyphs. Glyphs are draggable UI letters, and glyph boxes are made to slot them in. At first, I was going to lay down all the characters on the bar, after which I'd look at their X position to determine a word. However, Deborah came up with the idea to use boxes instead. On one side, this limited possible word length, but on the other hand, this gave the players a much clearer objective. So, I created a script which allowed the glyph box's parent to create a word by looking at the glyphs inside of its children. Then, I had a button to attack, which grabbed the enemy's health and attacked it. Woohoo! Murder! As for the enemy, it needed a way to generate word defenses. These defend the enemy from the player's attack. To do this, I added the capability for the basic health to have another word health as a word defense. Then, in the word attacker script, I added a check that would attack the word defense instead if the defense had the letter. Then, as for attacking, it just used the remaining letters of its word defense as its attack. Me and Deborah told each other that we'd finish the game today, so that the last few hours tomorrow could be spent on polishing the game. Spoiler alert, that didn't happen. There were various random elements we could control to make the game more replayable. The elements I focused on were random enemy attacks, random player names, a random player deck, and random enemy names. For generating random enemy attacks, I made a Scrabble-like point system, where each letter had its own score, so rarer letters cost more points. Then, I gave enemies attack points, with which they could generate a word. This made it so that we could easily increase the difficulty of a word attack as the player progressed. More attack points meant longer words with rarer letters. As for the player names, I used a similar system, giving it player name points, and letting it draw a random name. And, well, even generating a random player deck was similar, but this time I just grabbed random letters from the point table. To make it more playable, I did pump up the number of vowels in there, so that there's a bigger chance to get a vowel, which would make creating words easier. Now, generating random enemy names was similar to that of generating a player's name. However, to make sure that the player could defeat an enemy, the name generator would look at the player's deck and make sure that the name only had those letters. When we started working today, we had 3 hours to finish our game. The gameplay loop was not done. Enemies didn't spawn, couldn't choose a player. Also, Deborah spent 5 hours on some rotating doors. Now, in any game jam, here are the moments hit that our plan was too ambitious and that we had to start scrapping stuff. Here, you truly decide how you're going to spend the remainder of your precious time. What last things are going to make it into the game? What last-ditch efforts are you going to perform? Remember this little graph? This is the final boss. It's time to connect all the pieces and finish this game. Time to see what still needs to be done. For the battle gameplay loop, the enemy needs to generate an attack, player needs to generate glyphs, player needs to attack or pass, and the attacks need to collide. For the gameplay loop, the enemy needs to die, and doors need to generate, and the other stuff. The player also needs to die, the player needs to be able to choose a class, and the final letter of an enemy's name should be added to the player deck. It was spaghetti code time. I dropped all my code conventions and morals and was going to make it work at all costs. If it says anything, I start to make commits like this, which, admittedly, makes it a bit difficult to remember what I exactly did, but I'll try my best. I believe I first started with the battle loop. I created a turn manager, which would perform different tasks depending on whether it was the player's turn or enemy's turn. The player could end their turn by pressing the pause or attack button, and the game would handle everything else. I will say that it was very buggy, but for some reason I still felt the need to make it go to fancy things with enumerators like this. It was fancy for sure, but it didn't mean that I realized I should spend my time somewhere else. The turnip still had a couple bugs, but I had no time. It was a better idea to just start on the enemy generation upon enemy death. And, well, the code for this is absolutely disgusting. This code checked if the enemy was, well, an enemy when it died, then did something for the turn manager and then generated a bunch of doors, and I'm honestly not sure why the enemy got deleted. I also remember increasing the attack points the enemy got, if you remember that, but I don't know where that went either. But it worked, and that was all that mattered at the moment. And then the final hour started, and there was still quite some stuff to do. Luckily, Deborah already made a game over scene, so I just made a dev of a player go to that scene. For the player class choosing, I added an object, which saved the player's class choice at the choosing scene, to then apply the stats to the player in the battling scene before self-destructing. And now, it was time for the deck build. Never mind. Well, at least the game works without it. Also, Deborah made this trailer in like 2 minutes. Our game was buggy, broken, but from the amount of spaghetti code it arose. And our jam site actually had prizes, and, well, somehow we won the Best Game Award. Anywho, I'd planned it before to make a video out of this, so to make the game a bit more fun before releasing this video, me and Deborah fixed some minor bugs. So, go play the game.